Hey guys, I've got some important information to share with you on the impossible Easter egg for Shadows of Evil. I had a pretty good lead, but it might be debunked. I want to show you all of that. Then I want to clarify what type of Easter egg this is. I know that people are currently hunting and they're looking in areas that this might not be associated with. And then the big one is Jason Blundell, representing Treyarch, promised us after the release of Shadows of Evil that in 8 years it would be revealed to us what this impossible Easter egg is. And currently we are in the 8th year post-release. One of the more interesting possible leads on this impossible Easter egg was the diamond camo that you earned from multiplayer. It was brought to my attention that it appeared that the diamond camo on specific weapons was flashing, and it looked like it could be Morse code. I had made a video on this and definitely was able to decode something, and you can see here I'm kind of in the dark. You can see that camo flashing. I went in and used mods to drop the can on the ground so I could have a better look at it, and what's interesting is that there's only 3 weapons that the camo flashes on. It's the KN-44, the XM launcher here, that's what you're seeing, and then also the HVK. And when you look at it, it definitely looks like there's clear dots and dashes that could translate into Morse code. If you look at the camos on the weapons that don't have the flashing, yeah, they're just completely still. Nothing's going on there. Something that I noticed while throwing weapons all over the ground to check out the camos, there's quite a big difference between the color variation of the ones that flash versus the ones that don't. The group of weapons at the top of the screen that are bright, yeah, those don't have any flashing camo on them. The ones at the bottom, the KN and the XM, that has the flashing camo. It makes sense that they would darken it so you could see the flashing. And all we can do is speculate as to what's going on here. We did look into the game files to see what's going on with this camo, and there are 2 separate files for diamond camo. The ones without the flashing is called diamond camo test, and then the ones that do flash don't have the word test next to it in the file. So I'm wondering if maybe the devs that finalized these weapons, they grabbed the wrong file, and maybe they got their hands on like an alpha build of the camo, because the file names are really similar. There's just one change at the end where the one that doesn't flash says test. And honestly, you really can't tell in game or in the menus that these are really different. You have to literally throw them on the ground like this to see the difference. And we will probably never know if this was intentional or not. I would say maybe not, but we had our hopes up because it looked like it was flashing Morse code, and maybe it was tied to some Easter egg, and maybe even the impossible Easter egg. We didn't know. So way back when, I had made a video trying to decode what this could be flashing into Morse code, and the best I could work out is that maybe it's flashing the word time, T-I-M-E. It was kind of hard to see a start and a stop, so I didn't really know where to go with it. And then I was talking to one of my friends, and we were like, you know what? Maybe one of those letters is not correct. Since it was really hard to tell a start and stop while looking at the camo, it's possible that the E is the dot that's supposed to actually go to the beginning with the dash, which would decode differently and would possibly decode into AIM instead of time. And then I was like, well, I know where I've seen this same pattern flashing. If you go on Shadows of Evil, all of the neon signs have specific letters, and they are flashing what could possibly be decoded into AIM as well. So I wanted to line up the flashing diamond camo with the flashing sign to see how it compared. And yes, it is the exact same pattern. They're using the same flashing on the diamond camo as they are on all of the neon signs on Shadows of Evil. At first I was like, this is really cool. Maybe this is something related. But then I'm also thinking this is a possibility of just a reused asset, and there's nothing here. So I wanted to go in and slow down the flashing on the sign and have a closer look. I wanted to see if the dots and dashes had uniformity and were structured in like the same length as when they were flashing and when they were not flashing. And then I wanted to go in and compare it to things that we know for sure are Morse code and are supposed to be decoded. So bear with me here. So yeah, I slowed down the video and I counted the milliseconds between flashes and when it was on and off. This is the complete sequence here broken down. So on the left, that white dot, that's where it starts. And then the dashes and dots, that's what you get and then on the very far right, it starts to repeat. So after seeing this, there are some issues with what was originally decoded. So an A in Morse code is dot dash, and when you look at the spacing, that dot and that dash is really far apart. When you're watching the sign flash, it's going so fast, you can't see this with the naked eye. You can't tell that that dot and dash are actually pretty spaced out. For me, I would need them to be closer together to believe that it was maybe an A. If you were to look at this and say, well, maybe the dot and dash are not connected, then you would not have an A, you might have an E and a T. Also, the reason why I'm starting with that dot where I am, where that E is because the largest amount of spacing is shown to the right. It says 64 milliseconds. There's a very large space there, and so that's why I was thinking that's going to be the start-stop area. The next part of the sequence looks okay. It's the dot dot, and they're very close together, 9 milliseconds. They're the closest ones together, so I don't have any problems saying maybe this is an I. The next one originally decoded into M dash dash, but after looking at this, I can see that there are some spacing issues between those two dashes. Those dashes have a 19 millisecond spacing, and I would like to see more of a 9 millisecond to believe that it could be an M. Those 19 milliseconds that are between those dashes that I thought was an M actually pairs up more with when the lights are off and you're going between letters. And this was the first breakdown that I did of these dots and dashes. I do something later that gives me even more information, but based on science and what you're seeing here, the spacing between those dashes fits more with what would be the spacing between letters. So I was thinking it's possible these dashes are not an M, they're actually two T's. So if you look at what the actual spacing is and try to break it down, it basically spells E-tit, and so that's definitely not a solve. So the next thing to look at is a real Morse code, something we know for sure is supposed to be translated, and there's a very good example on Blood of the Dead. And I only went through one other comparison. I'd like to do some more comparisons with some of the other Morse codes that are in some of the older games. This one here, you look through the shield to get the Morse code number that you go enter in on the Morse code machine in the warden's office. For this comparison, I did something different. I just tracked all of the dots and then the spaces between, and then I tracked the dashes in my video editor. So the sequence in the video is 3 dots and 2 dashes, and it translates into the number 3. When comparing the 3 dots that the light was indicating, the duration of them were exact, and also the dashes were the exact same length duration. Then when the light was off, I tracked that, and those were pretty close together. There was a little bit of difference between some of those, but just the fact that the dots were the same, the dashes are the same, there's no doubt. You do not question that this is Morse code. It's very uniform. So I went back to Shadows of Evil, back to that sign, and I wanted to compare it in the same way. Like, how long are those dots and dashes on for? Are the durations going to be uniform? And no, they are not. The 3 dots are all different. In fact, they get longer as you go down the sequence, and the dashes are not uniform in any way. And here I have them stacked, and you can see that that middle dot and dash are almost close together. It might be difficult to even tell if that's supposed to be a dot or dash. So for me, this doesn't look good. It's not uniform enough. And after seeing that the diamond camo is the exact same pattern as this sign, then probably during development, this diamond camo took precedence. This thing was probably made well before this sign was implemented or even thought about. And when they made the sign, they probably just grabbed anything in the files that was probably shared between multiplayer and zombies and just used a flashing asset, and it just happened to be connected to the diamond camo. And for me right now, it seems pretty debunked, and I'll tell you kind of what my thinking was with this when I thought that it said AIM in Morse code. I've seen rumors going around, and even Codename Pizza made a video about this years ago when Shadows of Evil first released. The rumor was that Shadows of Evil's impossible Easter egg is a backstory that Shadows of Evil is actually Atlantis, and basically it's Dimension 63's version of Atlantis. Then when you see this missing city sign and it's saying hint, and then you see the poster that shows the missing city and it's identifying, it looks like Shadows of Evil as the missing city, that could possibly link to this rumor. There's also one other similarity from the real Atlantis myths and our map and our characters. In the real Atlantis stories, there was a god, Poseidon. He was upset with the people of Atlantis. They were sinning a bunch. launch, and he basically destroyed it and sunk it under the water with earthquakes and volcanoes. In Shadows of Evil, a big part of the story is based around our characters and sins that are attached to them. And you hear the character quotes and you see it on the Pack-a-Punch door before it's open. There's Apothicon symbols, and each of them are connected to one of the characters, and they also translate into one of the 7 deadly sins. And then our characters and the location also face a similar apocalyptic event like Atlantis did. And at the end of the Easter egg, we did avert the apocalypse, but the next day the Apothicon gods went ahead and just destroyed Dimension 63, and in that destroyed Shadows of Evil, which can be like Atlantis with the god destroying it. We've got the Apothicon gods destroying it. So with that information, and then me originally decoding this missing city sign into AIM, I was like, maybe this is an acronym and it could stand for Atlantis is missing. But then really breaking it down and seeing that if you were looking at this from a scientific point of view and it says eat it, no, we're not on the right track at all. There are some other connections with Atlantis to Shadows of Evil. I'm not going to go over that. This video is already getting too long. I can cover that later if I feel like it's valid enough. I know in the beginning of the video, I wanted to show you some really important stuff that Jason Blundell said about this impossible Easter egg, but I'm going to quickly put together another video so that this one doesn't drag out. The next video is going to be important for us to work together. I have an idea that might work, and we might get our answers for this impossible Easter egg, but look out for that video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what you think about all this craziness, and we'll see you next video.